Sometimes when you're driving down the road all by yourself, you begin to hear a voice that tells you need to look around, pay attention. Maybe something isn't quite right. That voice is me. It's the voice of Gord. G'day everybody, and welcome to Voice of Gord. One of the aims of this show since its inception has been to bring you people that might be a little on the older side, maybe a few more miles on them, maybe a little bit more wisdom to share. Folks who aren't necessarily on social media, you're not really going to bump into online. I brought you my friend Gavin from New Zealand a few episodes back. He's 74 years old and has seen some amazing things. If you missed out on that one, you should go check it out. And my next guest is in much the same vein. My very own Uncle Chris. At 79, he's now retired, but has had quite the life in the trucking business, and joins the show to share with you his experiences and the wisdom he's gleaned from a career both behind the wheel, in management, and as an entrepreneur, starting his very own freight brokerage in 1985. There's lots of folks in freight world that listen to this show, and I think you guys will appreciate hearing from my uncle and what he has to say about the evolution of the business, the state of the industry, and what makes for running a successful freight brokerage or just business in general. While we're here, I just want to thank everybody for listening and sticking with the show so far. This is episode 25. When I first started this little project, I thought maybe I might get 12 or 15 episodes out, speak with a small handful of people I wanted to speak with, but it's sort of taken on a life of its own, and I'm glad you guys have all been along with me for the ride. As you know, this show is free. I don't charge any money. I have no sponsors, and I'm probably going to keep it that way. But I would really appreciate it if you shared this show, especially with other truckers and people in the logistics business, and just anybody who might find it interesting. That's the only thing I ask, and I would really appreciate it if you passed it around. All right, let's get to my Uncle Chris. G'day everybody, and welcome to another episode of Voice of Gord. I'm Gord. This is my voice. The other voice you're going to hear today, very special guest, my Uncle Chris. He's a retired freight broker, former truck driver, an all-around good guy, and he's been very generously going to donate some time to us and let all you young bucks out there in the world of freight brokering know what the score is. G'day, Uncle Chris.
Hey, how are you doing on there, Gordy?
I'm doing really well. This is awesome. I'm not sure, and don't take this the wrong way. I'm not sure how many older folks listen to podcasts, but you're probably going to be my oldest guest thus far.
Yeah, probably am. Yeah, 79 years old now.
Oh,
79
wow.
summers and 79 summers and a lot of bad falls.
Right. So are you at your place in Florida, or are you back home in Stony Creek?
I sold my place in Florida. I'm back in Stony Creek. Yep.
Cool. So what are you going to do for the harsh Canadian winter now?
Live through it, I guess. Yeah.
The long-suffering Canadian, and I mean that's, as a returning snowbird, you've been going to Florida for how many years now?
Oh, geez, about 20, almost 20 years. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I'll tell you what, the traffic's so bad down there, and everything is so screwed up that I was glad to finally get out of there.
Okay. Remind us what town was your Florida home in?
Sarasota.
Right. What do you think caused all the
Yeah.
traffic and whatnot? Just all the people moving to Florida, just because
Well,
it's too
yeah,
popular for its own good?
you're about the right thing. That's about the right thing. Yeah. Yeah. It's just too much. I mean, the toughest time I've ever had in the trip when I drove down there from here in Hamilton to there was from Tampa to Sarasota. God bless me. I was on the edge of my seat all the way.
Oh, wow.
Oh, well.
Interesting. Well,
It was the right time to do it, Gordy.
right.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
it's a long way from sort of central northern Ontario to Florida. So start us off. Just introduce yourself for everybody. So 79. So that means you would have been born in when? 1940 what?
1944.
Right.
I was born in 44. Yeah. Just towards the end of the war.
Right. Yeah. And Grandpa was just getting ready to get in his tank and launch across the channel.
Well, at that point, yeah, he was. He was 3 days behind the D-Day invasion. Yeah. Yeah. At Normandy. So, yeah, he didn't get back from, but they took him from there and they sent him to India. And he got back on a American troop ship in 1946. Yeah.
So
When he finally got home.
You didn't see him at all for the first 2 years you were around.
That's right. No, I was just a gleam in his eye when he left.
Right. That must have been fairly hard. I mean, it's hard to ask the dead what they feel about things, but I imagine Grandpa probably that's a hard thing to do, to go and fight a war when you got a newborn at home.
Well, at the time, at that time that was the life. That's the way life was. You know what I mean? It was a little different than it is today.
Right.
Yeah.
And you and Noni would have been. Were you in Sudbury or Meaford or Burwash? Where were you
Yeah,
guys?
no, I was in Sudbury at that time. Yeah.
Right.
At that time I was, yeah. That's where I grew up. I was as a kid anyway, but I think I left there, I was 7 or 8 years old. Yeah.
And that's when Grandpa and Noni decided to move to Hamilton.
Exactly. Yeah. He took over a Sunoco station here in Hamilton, and that's what we were doing.
Right. And so what was Grandpa obviously, drove a Sherman. He was a tank driver with the Gray and Simcoe Foresters. And,
yeah, he was a tank commander. Yeah, amphibious tank commander.
Right. And so
that's what
the skills he would have picked up in tank operation, maintenance, and being a mechanic would have applied quite well once he got home.
Oh, absolutely. That's why he ended up in the mechanical business, ended up as a master mechanic. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, so he had the Sunoco station, and then ends up working for Fred Norton at some point, correct?
Yep. Freddie Norton Motor Lines. Yes, sir. Norton.
Right. So this is back in the 1960s, when there was still regulation of rates and authorities, and it was much more difficult to get into the trucking business.
Very much so. Not so much as in Canada, but in the United States it was, yeah.
So
Canada wasn't too bad.
What was the difference then in sort of regulation and authority acquisition? How did those two systems differ at that time?
I think the ICC was very much in control at that time. We're talking early 60s, like 60, 61. I left even in the late 50s when he was working for Norton's. And they were running Toronto or Hamilton, Winnipeg. And they would cross at Sarnia and go through Chicago and up into Winnipeg that way. I mean, because it was too tough running 11, which is the Canadian side.
Didn't they not finish the Trans-Canada Highway 17 along Lake Superior? Wasn't that not completed until about 1968?
Oh, I think even later than that. They used to take 11 and go up that way, and then through Smooth Rock Falls and Nipigon, yeah. But that was Highway 11 that you ran up through New Liskeard and places like that.
So Norton's, they would go around the south route through Chicago instead of I guess
Yes.
I take it the Mackinac Bridge wasn't built yet.
Oh yeah. No. Well, yeah, I think it was, but I mean, most of the time they would not run the Mackinac. They'd run around it up through Wisconsin and through Chicago. That's the way
Oh,
we would run it
oh wow.
that
That's
time.
awful
Yeah.
long way to go to Winnipeg that way.
Oh, I think it was 1,350 miles, and if you ran the Mackinac, it was 1,250 or something. You know. Yeah, something like that.
Right.
Mhm.
So Grandpa's working for Norton's. He's also spinning wrenches in the shop. And then
Yeah.
then you come along. So how did you eventually end up, you worked for Norton's as well?
Well, yeah, my dad brought me down there on Saturdays, and I was 13, 14 years old. And I would be, I'd clean up stuff and do this and that. And then as I got stronger, I used to bust tires on this thing, and I'd change tires on trailers, and then I'd wash out a lot of the trailers because we used to haul a lot of meat from Winnipeg through northern Ontario, drop it all off, and by the time you got to Stony Creek, all the hooks would be there. I'd have to wash them all out, wash the trailers out, and acid wash them all. Until I was, I did that till I was about 17 years old, 18 years old when I left for the military. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you spent some time in the Canadian Army.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I spent 1962 to 65 in the Canadian military. Yeah. And then I got out.
And what were you doing in the Army?
I was with a 2 SSM battery when I ended my career as a surveyor. When they fired rockets and stuff into places, they wanted to know where they landed. So we would be the.
You don't want to be firing blind.
No, we would be the only ones up at the impact point.
Yeah, my previous guest of mine, this young fellow named Mike Lombard, he was in the American military, and he was an artillery guy. And I think Dad, your little brother Leonard, he was artillery in Hamilton in the reserves.
Yes, he was. Yeah. Yeah. I was with RCHA in Petawawa. I was with the Whiskey Battery at that time, and then I was stationed back in Camp Shiloh with 2 SSM battery. Yeah.
Shiloh out in Manitoba.
You got it, man. Coldest place in the world.
Awful.
Only place in the world that was a desert in Canada. It's a desert out there.
Right. So a good place to practice firing artillery rounds.
You got it. And missiles.
Right. Yeah. So you get out of the military in 1965, and then what's next?
Yep. Well, then I got involved in the trucking operations. I worked for Norton Motor Lines then at night, working on their trailers and fixing things. And then I went to work for John Vermeulen, Johnny Spud, it was called, and I hauled bagged potatoes all over the place. And then I went to work for Orley Robertson, hauling iron from Algoma Steel and Sault Ste. Marie back here and pulling trains. And then from there, I ended up going with another guy called Mike Magic. He was a broker, and I drove his truck, and I was hauling produce out of Florida. After that, I went to work for Earl Paddock, International Iron and Metal, and drove for them late 60s and early 70s until 73. But in the meantime, in between there, I'd worked for Norton Motor Lines as a broker, as a dispatcher. And Charlie Gottran, who went to work for Atomic Transport, asked me to come aboard, and I left Paddock's in 73 and went to work for him as the terminal manager for Atomic Transport in Mississauga. And from there, my career was more in management after that for a few years with them. And then I was general manager for Melbourne Truck Lines from 81 to 82. And then I went back to Atomic because they asked me to come back, and I was not happy with Melbourne at the time, and I went back to work for them, and then I had a bit of a falling out with Atomic because they're from Winnipeg. They're flatlanders, I used to call them, and things. I decided to start a brokerage operation because I could see the way things are going with it. That once the ICC dumped everybody, and I could see that they were going to really come down hard on the Teamsters Union. I could see that this was an opportunity to get into the brokerage business, and that's what started it really in 1985, 86.
Right. So I think something that would have served you well as being a manager at Atomic and at Melbourne is the fact, like, you started from the ground up, right? Like, you're washing out trailers, you're doing tires, you hauled trains down from the Sioux, you've been to Florida, you've hauled refrigerated, you had all kinds of adventures with Grandpa, including surviving a rollover, if my memory serves correct.
Yes, that's very true. Yep.
Where did that take place?
That took place back in the 50s when he ran a load of stuff to go to Elliott Lake, and a drunk hit us in the left front tire and tore it right out, flipped the whole unit over. Yeah, that was up in northern Ontario, just south of North Bay. Yeah, that was I was a very kid then. I was asleep in a truck at the time. Yeah.
So you're dozed off in the corner in the passenger seat.
Yep, I was in the jump seat. Yep. When I woke up, I was flying through the air.
Back then, they didn't have bunks.
No, they didn't have bunks. No, not in them days. No, sir.
No, it's funny listening to various people complain about how hard they've got it. And I think back to even as late as the 1980s, when Dad worked for J-Line for a little while, Townsley used to send him to New Brunswick with coils and that old R model Mac with no bunk on it. And he would stop in Heartland, New Brunswick. There was a fiberglass shop there, and they built bunks. I think they called them Heartland bathtubs or Heartland swimming pools or something. There was some like weird nickname for them. And Townsley would buy one. They would mount it on the back of the truck, and poor Dad would drive it all the way back from New Brunswick. Then Townsley would take it off and sell it to somebody else, and Dad would get one. You know,
that's right. Yeah, that's the way it was in those days. I'll tell you what. And there's no such thing as air conditioning, you know. And you'd run a load for paddocks down into the city in New York and sit in the heat down there, for Christ's sake, and trying to get a sleep. Oh yeah, but I mean, what the hell? Everything changes. But you know what? I'm going down the road today, and I think to myself, thank God I'm not doing that anymore, because I see the quality of driver and the quality of everything is not there anymore. You know,
yeah,
I mean, there's very few real quality drivers out there anymore.
Yeah, many such cases. So when you were working for paddocks, and you know, I want to shoot some credit to the paddocks, because, as you know, that's where I started working when I was a kid. And the Paddock family have been very kind to all of us, to yourself, to Dad, to me. They're a very, very good operation. Unfortunately, Earl passed on before I started working there. But you would have known Earl Paddock personally. Can you speak to the sort of quality level of person that guy was?
Oh, he was top level. This guy helped more people in the trucking industry over the years than anybody else. A lot of guys got started because of him. So, I mean, you bear that in mind. You know, he used to call me the ice cream man every time I went out, because I always kind of dressed a little bit smarter than everybody else. And he said, "You look like an ice cream guy," he says. He used to make me laugh. Yeah. And he always called me WC. Yeah.
Right.
Because
And
I
I
had to.
believe and the paddocks have this they have they name all of their trucks after former family members, friends, and
and
associates and
employees. Yep.
and employees. And my dad, Leonard McGill, is driving unit number 550, which is the WC McGill, which is named after you.
That's correct. Yep. Yeah, they've always been very good to me. And you know what I'm doing now? I'm an escort driver for the paddock wide loads.
Right.
So 50 years later, I'm still involved with those guys. And I sold them Paramount Freight Systems when we had that with our brokerage firm, and I sold that to them.
That's right.
You know,
all those
yeah.
all those Western Stars. That's correct. And 53-foot van trailers.
Exactly right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So when you were working for them in the 70s, running to New York and New Jersey and whatnot, as you know, I live in Ithaca, New York now, which is not far from Binghamton. And Binghamton served as this. It's a crossroads, 17, 81, 88.
Yep.
All these various roads pass through there. Back in the old days, it was US Route 11. Before they had built 81. And I understand you guys used to stop there quite often.
Oh yeah.
And hang out at
a big truck stop.
Yeah, and hang out at a place called the Parkway Motel.
Oh man, yeah, it was a Parkway bar. It was a bar right beside the restaurant.
Which later became Country Bob's, correct?
That's right. It became Country Bob's,
Yeah. I like to talk about Country Bob's as this sort of a honky tonk throwback to a different time. I mean, it's been closed for 20 years now, but I think that it's the legend of the place. I'd love to find Country Bob's widow or girlfriend or whoever and talk to them about the history of that place. Like just the people that would come and go through there. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Oh yeah. I mean, even when I became the general manager of Melbourne Truck Lines, I had 150 trucks running there into the U.S. picking up containers. I had 150 owner operators.
Wow.
At that time with Melbourne. And we were picking up, every day from Maersk, Sealand, everyone, and they would all be stopping at Country Bob's. And I knew there was kind of trouble down there. And I went to Country Bob's. I knew the kind of trouble they were getting into down there. So I went down and spoke to the head of the police department of the highway there to ask him, to keep an eye on this stuff. And he wouldn't even talk to me. He said, listen, this is the way it is, and leave it alone,
Really? So like this would be like the New York State Police detachment in Binghamton.
That's right. Exactly. That was a long time ago, man. And they couldn't do nothing about it and didn't want to really, because so far there'd been no problems, so they were leaving it alone.
Right.
But I knew that eventually there was going to be a problem. Because I mean, you got 150 vehicles going through there 3 times a week. You can imagine.
Well, you get out of Hamilton or Toronto at whatever time, often late in the afternoon or evening, and then it's 8, 9, 10 hours down to New Jersey, depending on traffic and how many times you stop, or how many scales you have to run around. And then you get shagged around at the port and unload and reload. And I think a lot of them guys were about out of gas by the time they got back to Binghamton.
Absolutely. Then get into the bar and have a couple of drinks. It used to scare the pants out of me. Yeah. And don't forget, when we were running in 70s and 71, 72, we could not cross the border until midnight on Sunday nights.
Oh, that's right, because there wasn't anybody working.
No, it wasn't just working because you weren't a produce hauler. You were just a regular hauler of merchandise. You couldn't cross till midnight on Sunday nights.
Whose rule was that? Was that U.S. Customs or somebody else?
Yeah, U.S. Customs. Yeah.
I
So we
remember
could.
that rule stayed in place until the early 1990s, because I remember going with Dad when Dad worked for Concord out of Toronto for a little while, and the paddocks used to do this too. On the weekends, you could take your trailer and drop it at the border, and they would give you some kind of number, and that would get you to the front of the line at Sunday night.
Yeah, on Sunday night, because I mean, you cleared it earlier before this curfew come on. Yeah. Oh yeah, it was something else. I mean, you couldn't leave the yard till 11, and you had to be in New York by, 9 in the morning or something to get it done. So it wasn't a great time Sundays, and you always tried to spell Sunday with the family, because you didn't get in till Saturday, and you were going out Sunday at night again.
Yeah, hard yakka. So yeah, so you have all this experience throughout the industry. You work for the paddocks, you work for Melbourne, you work for Atomic, and then you decide to strike out on your own. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Load brokering wasn't really was it really a thing before deregulation came along?
No, deregulation came as soon as that happened. I mean, you got to remember something, Gordy. A load from Toronto to Buffalo used to be $900.
Wow,
okay? That's how much it was.
It's only 100 miles, if that.
Yeah, I know, but it was still $900. And if you wanted to go to California, it was $8,000.
I would imagine it's about that now, though, isn't it?
No, it's not even close to that. I mean, but the point was, as soon as deregulation come in, a good broker knew where all the trucks were. It didn't matter who was driving, but if they were a decent operator, they were in some place that you had loads, that you could find loads. And that's why brokerage was so prevalent, and we grew because we could find trucks in places where nobody else was.
Right. So you and your partner Jeff start Lakeside. Yep. Was it originally called Lakeside Logistics, or was it called something else?
Lakeside Freight Systems. Yeah.
Right. In Oakville.
Yeah, that's where we went to Oakville, because the phones at that time were the best places to be in. Was Oakville, because you could still talk to Toronto.
What do you mean? What do you mean by the phones?
Well, the phone system at that time, everything was long distance. If we kept it in Hamilton, so we put it in Oakville, so we could talk to everybody in the Toronto area for no cost.
Wow! Imagine. So just right now, it's 2023, and we have all this technology. I'm speaking with you via Zoom from home, and it's costing us nothing. People regularly send things digitally. There's people alive today that have no idea what you mean by long distance with regards to phones. So you're starting this business, and you're basing the location of your office around the fact that you cannot make phone calls from Hamilton to Toronto without incurring a significant upcharge. So you have to move your office halfway to Toronto.
That's exactly right.
And this is 1985?
This is 1985. Yeah, 85, 86. Yep.
Wow. Yeah, so a little lesson there for you youngins. And when you started, it was just you and Jeff, right?
That's right. Yep. And my wife Gina, she would be in the office doing the paperwork.
Right.
First year, yeah.
It's a 2-man, 1-woman operation in 1985, and when your partner
85, 86, yeah.
When your partner Jeff recently sold out to who did Lakeside Logistics end up getting sold to?
You know who finally ended up owning it? Uber.
Really?
Uber. Uber owns it now.
Okay.
Yeah, it went to Trans Freight or Trans something out of Dallas, and then Uber bought it.
No kidding. So, but like, so what year did you retire?
2009, I suppose. 2009, 2010, I was finally out of it.
And how many employees did Lakeside Logistics have at that time?
There was about 40 of us.
So you built it up from you and Jeff and Gina to 40 people.
Yep. Yep.
And how many? And how much? So, like, what was your guys' annual throughput in 2009?
By 2009, we were running about 55 million.
That's not bad.
No, we were doing good. Yeah.
And how many? So, could you break that down? So, 55 million. How many loads had you moved in 1 year?
Holy shit! At that time, Gordy, I can't even imagine how many. Probably 35,000, maybe.
Wow, that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So you start in 1985. You see this opportunity with the opening up of the trucking business. Deregulation happened in the United States in 1980. It sort of came a couple of years later in Canada.
Yep.
And you guys start Lakeside Freight Systems. How did that evolve in the first few years? And as a new business owner, like yourself and Auntie Gina and Jeff, like how did the growth go? What were the lessons you learned along the way in the very beginning? Like, how did that all crack out?
Well, the first thing was everybody that we had dealt with over the years were just not too sure about this brokerage business, because there was a lot of guys out there in the brokerage business that didn't play the game right. They grabbed the money and left and didn't pay people. But we were not like that. The whole thing about was trustworthy, and the customers that I had and knew me, they trusted me. And I think that's what happened. And from there, we built a very good reputation in the business. And that's basically what drove us to be so successful.
So you made it a priority to make sure the carriers got paid.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't care about anything else. The carrier got paid, and he got paid in 30 days. Even if we had to wait, 60 and sometimes 90 days for our money, we made sure they had their money up front. So they trusted us. And, and we only used carriers that we could count on, that they looked after the freight, you know what I mean, to make sure it was there on time and everything else. And, and a lot of times in our business, in the trucking business, as you well know, things happen. So I always made sure that all our staff always told the truth to the customer. Yes, the truck is stuck here, and here's what's happened. He never lied, saying, "Oh, he's going to be there in an hour. He's going to be there in an hour." Never. I wouldn't even tolerate that.
Right. So
told the truth.
Being honest with your clients, and being honest and paying your carriers was one of the keys to your success.
Absolutely. Because now they could trust us. Everybody trusted us. Customer knew that we weren't telling them bullshit. And the carrier, he always got his money. Bang. It was very important. That was very important.
Right. And so who are some of your clients? I remember Campbell's Soup being one of the big ones.
Campbell's Soup was a big one. Allied Colloids was a big one. Ocean Spray was another big one. Nabisco Brands was another big one. I mean, you're talking some of the top level clients, in the world at that time.
Right. And moving many loads for them. I believe you guys branched into rail freight and a few other
non-trucking modes as well?
I don't think we never got involved in the rail part of it. We never touched on that. We stayed strictly with the trucking because we understood it the best, and we were better at that than anything else. So we stayed with that, you know.
I remember this story Dad telling me about Mark Williams and you having to hustle numerous piggybacks or containers from a rail yard to make sure Campbell's got covered over the course of one weekend when the train screwed up.
Yeah, I forget. Yeah, I think we did something like that one time. Yeah. We got involved in some odd things sometimes, and I can't remember them all now. I'm getting too old.
Man, you know, there's one guy who left us too early I wish was still alive, is Mark Williams. What an interesting character.
He was a pretty good trucker because he worked for us as an owner operator in the city, and Mark was he was good. Yeah. Different but good.
You got to be different to be in the trucking business.
No kidding.
All right. So my cousin Carson, your son, he's still working hustling freight.
Yeah, he's a dispatcher for a company out of Beamsville, Ontario. Yeah. And he doesn't enjoy the business as much as you did and I did. But he does it because but because that's where he learned, and I guess that's in your bones. He does all right, but he's not a happy guy with it.
Right. So, and how about
which is a sad thing.
How about cousin Samantha, who you left behind down in Florida?
Well, Samantha still got with Transfreight down there. You know, she's still part of that. She's always got her finger in something down there due to the trucking and freight, you know, so she does all right.
Right. And she was the connection that got Paramount, your trucking division, hooked up doing all those concerts back in the day.
Well, yeah, some of that, but that was more of the concert was more of a guy we were involved in up in Canada, and we did such a good job for him that the concert guys started to talk to us directly, and that's where we got the KISS operation going. That's where your dad looked after that. He ran with them for about 6 months on the KISS tour. So we were involved in that, but Samantha wasn't too involved in that, no.
Okay, because I think I seem to recall she worked for these guys in San Francisco called Hassett Air Freight, and then one of her air freight clients was the same guys that did all the T-shirts that we were hauling, Signatures Networks.
That could be, yeah, could be, yeah, that could be. But one of my guys that was working, oh God, his name just escapes me. Jeez, but he worked for me for a long time. He was very much involved with the concert tours and all that stuff, and he looked after it, and we did such a good job with it that we looked after all the concerts coming in and out of Canada and some in the States too.
So speaking of people, family and other employees, like one of the things I noticed about yourself, Lakeside, the Paddocks, various successful companies, is the proclivity towards like seeing and maintaining and honoring talent. So like you've had some really good people work for you.
Oh yes, but we treated them right too. You know what? A person used to come to work for me, and they'd work for me for a couple of weeks, and I'd say to them, "You made any mistakes today?" They'd say, "Oh no," you know. They'd say, "No, I didn't make mistakes." Well, I said, "You better get making some mistakes, because if you're making mistakes, you're making decisions, and that's what I want from you." And that's the way I believed it. people are going to make mistakes. But the same mistakes, then you're fired.
Well, as long as they're learning from them. And I mean, yeah, if you make a mistake and you learn from it and you grow and you move along.
That's exactly right, Gordy. And that's what I used to say to people. Get out there and make some mistakes. Now you're making decisions. I always believe the guys on the desk had to have the ability to not worry about it, to make a decision. Don't run to me to make a decision. You make it.
Right. So having the trust to be able to delegate that authority and having and making that, finding that out about one of your employees quickly so that you can keep around the kind of people that you can trust them to make the correct decisions.
Yeah, exactly. And giving them the ability to make decisions, and don't give them a hard time because they make a mistake. What the hell? They're learning,
Right. So another word for this is agency, which is something that we seem to, there's something about our culture in 2023 that's sort of antagonistic towards agency.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, how can anybody grow unless they make mistakes? It's impossible. I mean, I made lots of mistakes and I grew from it. Cannot grow without making.
So on that note, what kind of mistakes did you make, you or Jeff, or let's say, I know one of your employees I haven't mentioned yet, Alan Maddock, who worked for you for a long time. Like, what sort of mistakes did you guys make in the early days of developing and starting Lakeside Freight Systems that were key in learning from, that you might advise other people to avoid making or to learn from, as you say, your mistake?
Some places that we made mistakes, we hauled for people that were not credible people. And, we did work for them and they didn't pay their bills. There's a lot of people like that too. Or they'd hold your money for 120 days, you know what I mean? And you had to chase the pants off them to get it. That type of thing.
So don't do that for too long.
Don't do that for too long. I mean, the guy might be giving you the best in the business in the world, but by God, when the money comes time to come in the door, it doesn't come in. Yeah, keep away from those type of people. Yeah.
Right. Did you guys would have developed, so if you're a freight broker or in logistics, there's a lot of players on the market. And right now, I sort of follow a few people that discuss these things. There's an overcapacity, and there's this young guy in Arizona who is definitely going to listen to this. Hi, Reed. His name's Reed, and he's in the sort of brokerage freight hustling side of things. And he mentioned to me that there's something like 14,000 load brokers in the United States right now.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
That's an awful lot of middlemen. I mean, there's value in having somebody that can make connections for you, but what happens to your mind or opinion when there's like that many people operating in the market?
Well, it just drives down the price. Instead of making $100 a load, you're making $25 a load. Okay, so you got to move a lot of freight to pay the bills. So I'm not sure exactly how to answer even that. You know what I mean? When you think of the business, it's a brokerage business. Even other brokers, insurance brokers, or anything else like that, there's always some middleman making a few bucks off the top. There's just no question. But he's got the connections. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, traffic manager thinks that they know it all, but they don't know nothing about the business. As far as finding, trucks in no land Nebraska. I need a truck and no, it's stake and rack truck and no land, Nebraska. Well, the broker knows. Trucking company or the company that wants to move that freight, they don't know.
Or they should know, that the broker should know, right? As part of
That's
as
my
part
point.
as part of the value proposition to your clients, that ability to be able to cover that as soon as possible or basically immediately is where the value is.
That's exactly right. And at a decent price. Because one thing about the carriers is sometimes they get a little bit, greedy themselves. Oh, I'll try and charge them this. When you know the rate, you know what the truck should pay. The broker should. So he adds a little bit on for himself and he gets the truck. And that's why the prices of everything went down after they got rid of the Teamsters. And that's the biggest reason.
Right. So where does this getting rid of the Teamsters, as you put it, factor into the freight brokerage business?
Well, it wasn't actually the Teamsters. It was more the ICC. Once you got deregulation away, then you could make things happen. That's what I say about the load from Toronto to Buffalo is $900 down to $300. The load to San Francisco was, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. We dropped down to $3,000. It was just, that's the way it happened at that time.
Where was all that excess cake off the top going though? So you've dropped these rates, which is good for the people paying, right? Like he who pays the piper calls the tune. So it's good for the guy paying the piper, but what about the people at the bottom end actually doing the work?
Well, you know what? When I was trucking, even as a driver and just after that short career, you were making more money than the average guy because you were putting in the hours. Now, you're not. Everybody talks about the shortage of trucking. It's not a shortage of trucking. There's two major things that have happened, and that is the wages have dropped compared to the amount of hours you're putting in for the trucker. Okay? That's A. B, women don't put up with a guy being gone all the time. Marriage and things have changed that. Years ago, a female would hang in there because the guy was making a big buck, and also they had a different attitude at the time. So a guy could be gone for a week, and that was normal part of life.
Right.
Do you understand what I mean there?
Yeah. No, I get it totally. On that note, right about now, so in the 2019, the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics showed that like 94% of truckers are dudes, right? It's a very male dominated business. And
That's
I'm
correct.
imagining it was much the same, let's say in 1970, but it might have been closer to 99. I don't know. How often did you see female truckers in 1970 or 71?
You didn't. It might have been the odd one, but it was very, very rare.
Right. And now it's a little less rare, but it's still kind of rare. It's still somewhat.
Oh, it is rare.
It's still.
When you see the amount of equipment.
Pardon me?
Yeah, when you see the amount of equipment on the road now, it's still rare. It's still the small percentage would be females.
Right. It's just not that. There's something about the female personality that trucking just doesn't speak to it.
That's right. Exactly.
But on your office though at Lakeside, I recall there was quite a few girls in your office.
Oh no, I'll tell you what, they're great dispatchers. They know what they're doing, and they because they're meticulous and they add up. And the best some of the best teams I ever had was a male husband and wife teams. They were the best teams to run with.
Like trucking teams.
You know, yeah. Because she kept him on the straight and narrow and also did all the paperwork properly. You know what I mean? And they were on time all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I haven't, no woman I've ever been with ever really came trucking with me. I wouldn't expect Gina to go get her CDL and run team with me at all. So I've never been part I've never been part of that. I mean, I've met lots of husband wife teams, but to get that perspective from somebody on the management side to say a husband and wife team is actually a really good thing. That's interesting perspective.
Oh, very much so. I always preferred that because they did the job properly. You know, you had yin and yang in there, and they worked.
Very good. So what do you got going on for the rest of your summer? Are you going to be still doing oversized escorts like on a part-time basis?
Yeah. We keep running wings into Montreal, so that's kind of one of my little gigs there. That every Thursday I do that. And that keeps me off the streets and out of the bars.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, I enjoy that. It gives me something. I was getting pretty bored, Gordy. So I went to Scott at Paddocks and I said, "Listen, can you give me something to do?" And he gave me something to do. So that's good.
Do you still maintain your Class A?
No, I do not have it because I meant to do it here and they went on strike and I just let it go. Yeah.
Right. For a long time, if I recall correctly, the province of Ontario was making drivers over the age of 65 resit their test every year.
That's correct. Yep.
And did they
They're
ever
still
stop?
doing it.
They're still doing it.
I think that now it's a little higher age. I think it's 80 or something now. You got to do it every year.
Right. Yeah. Because a lot of older guys I knew were all of a sudden magically getting licenses in Manitoba and Alberta so that they didn't have to put up with Ontario's retesting regime.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, what's funny to me is they were giving all you old timers who could probably drive a truck with blindfolded, but they sure don't do very much to make sure that the new guys coming in are any good.
Well, you know what? I see that on the road now, driving and even going to Florida and a few times that I have, and then on this escort business. So I think to myself, man, the quality is just not there anymore, you know, and all these, the government's giving so much money to these outfits that are supposedly training these guys, and they can't even back up. I mean, good Lord. I mean, when I started my career, you were first thing you did is load freight on the dock, you know. You know, light stuff on the top, light, heavy stuff on the bottom. Okay. And then you went on from there and, you know, you just drove a straight truck and then you drove bigger trucks and that's how you learned, you know.
A natural progression of sorts.
That's exactly right, Gordy. Yeah, a natural progression. You know, so I don't think you can see that anymore because, again, the simple fact is that the money's not there like it used to be. It used to be big money to be a driver because you were gone so much. You know, not anymore. The money's not there anymore, and the women that are married to you, they don't put up with it anymore. You know, you can't be gone all the time. They expect you to be in there changing diapers, same as they are. You know?
Yeah, I certainly, I came off the road to be home for my kids. I work in a local capacity now.
Yeah.
Maybe someday I'll go back on the road. They keep saying they're going to automate us away, but I don't know. I'm fairly skeptical of that.
I don't think so. I don't think that'll happen. Because, I mean, fine, you can send a truck from here to there and it'll do its thing. But who's going to look after the paperwork? Who's going to do, I mean, it will evolve to some, it's like 245-footers going down the thruway. That evolved. I see it now on the 401, 245, 253-foot trailers on the 401, and that was unheard of, a few years ago. But I understand it will evolve to a point, but you'll never take the guy out of the cab.
Not while you're still around anyway.
Well, I won't be around much longer, buddy. I'm on the short end of the toilet paper roll. As you say, life's like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it goes.
Yeah. Well, Uncle Chris, I really appreciate your time, sir. This was a fun little chat, and I hope the people that listen to my show derive some value from it.
I hope so too. I'm, just shooting the breeze. Anyway, Gordy, you take care of yourself, and thank you very much for calling me and asking me to do it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, one of the focuses of this show is to get older gentlemen that might not play around on the internet as much as us young guys, and commit your stories to posterity. So I got my buddy Gavin in New Zealand, who I think is 74, and now you, and there's a couple other older fellows on the list here I'm going to get to, but thanks for joining and giving me your time.
Okay, Gordy. Thank you for asking me.
All right.
You take care of yourself and look after your family.
Yeah, will do. No problem, sir. Way of the road.